Hi everyone, welcome to Lesson 8 of Coffee Culture Around the World with Sagebrush Coffee. Last lesson we talked about coffee culture in Oceania, and today we'll be talking about coffee culture in South America. The coffee crop itself has played a significant role in the history and development of South and Central America. Since it was brought to the Americas, the crop has become highly profitable both for large estates and small family-owned farms. Let's start by looking at Brazil, which today stands as the #1 coffee-producing country in the world. There's an unconfirmed legend that coffee was brought to Brazil by a Portuguese-Brazilian officer named Francisco de Moyo Paleta when he traveled to the French Guiana to resolve a border dispute. He allegedly had a love affair with the French governor's wife, who gave him a bouquet of flowers as a departing gift and hid coffee seeds inside of them. This legend has a few variations and it may be entirely made up, but we do know that however coffee came to Brazil, it came around the mid to late 1700s. Brazilian coffee farms, known as fazendas, were run at first by slaves and then by immigrant workers after Brazil's abolition of slavery in 1888. Many of the immigrant workers who came after the abolition of slavery were from Japan, as I mentioned in Lesson 6. From the late 1800s to the early 1900s, Brazil's share of the world coffee market grew from 30% to a whopping 80%. A massive surplus of Brazilian coffee in the late 1800s caused global coffee prices to drop. Brazil's new republic initially responded by printing more money. This was unsuccessful because it caused inflation and devalued money. In 1906, the Brazilian government bought a surplus of coffee to keep it off the market and try to raise prices back up. This was done again a little over a decade later after the conclusion of the First World War. Now, what did the government do with all the coffee they bought? About 78 million bags of it were burned. Other quantities were dumped into the sea, used to power trains, and compressed into bricks. As a result of these questionable practices, Brazil started to lose its monopoly on coffee, and the Inter-American Coffee Agreement was created to try and internationally regulate coffee prices and quotas. This later became the International Coffee Agreement, which lasted until the 1980s. The agreement eventually fell apart after the United States withdrew in 1989 and Brazil's coffee prices dropped yet again. The International Coffee Agreement has been created and recreated 7 times since its first establishment, the most recent being in 2007. The current agreement has 77 members, which does include Brazil but does not include the United States. The Brazilian Specialty Coffee Association, or the BSCA, was established in 1991. This was one of the multiple organizations to form the first Cup of Excellence competition in 1998. The Cup of Excellence competition has since become the world's leading coffee quality competition. Today, Brazil has regained its throne in the coffee industry and is still the #1 country in terms of coffee production, producing almost 40% of the world's coffee. Moving on to Colombia, we have another origin story with a few different variations. The most popular was that it was introduced in 1723 by Jesuits. However, the plant didn't become profitable for the country until the late 1800s or early 1900s. Colombia has now become the 3rd largest producer of coffee in the world, ranking just under Brazil and Vietnam. All of their coffee exports are controlled by the Federación Nacional de Cafeteros, or the FNC. Part of Colombia's great success as a world leader in coffee has actually come from its unique marketing. Juan Valdez, a farmer from the country, became the poster boy for Colombian coffee in 1958, making their packaging stand out worldwide. Many of the advertisements that Valdez appears in includes a photo of him standing proudly next to his donkey Conchita. Sagebrush's owner Matt and one of his sons Noah traveled to Colombia in October of 2022 for the Best Cup competition and auction. This competition is an annual event hosted by Cafe Imports and Banexport, as well as several other companies in Colombia. The competition started in 2012, but this was only their 8th occurrence because of the interruption of COVID-19. This year alone, they had over 1,200 coffee producers submit samples to the competition, and the owners narrowed those 1,200 samples down to a top 30 that judges like Matt and Noah got to try, rank, and buy at auction. The goal of the Best Cup competition is to show what Colombia has to offer in traditional Colombian coffee. The parameters for submission is that all coffee must be washed, of traditional varieties, and that the producers must do the processing on their own farm. Matt said that there was a decent amount of pressure associated with being a judge because he knew that the winner and the top 15 producers would have their lives changed forever. Moving on from Colombia, Peru, Venezuela, Ecuador, and Bolivia are 4 other South American countries that produce coffee on a considerable market scale. However, somewhere you can't overlook is Uruguay, which is popular for its innovative micro-roasteries. The most popular micro-roastery in Uruguay is called The Lab. The Lab and other micro-roasteries have set out to bring specialty coffee to Uruguay, a country that was not previously known for high-quality coffee. Baristas at these micro-roasteries experiment with different coffee brewing methods and drink recipes while also providing educational information about their coffee to their customers. If you think this sounds a lot like what we're doing at Sagebrush, you're not wrong. As interesting as coffee culture is in Brazil, Colombia, Uruguay, and the surrounding countries, this is only the southern half of the Americas. Next lesson, we're going to look at Central America, and trust me, you don't want to miss that. Make sure to stay tuned for that upcoming lesson and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Until then, I'm Kourtney, and I'll see you next time.